brother, right? My friends, Eric Andreas, your guitar sage here. I'm joined with Chuck Jones today, hit songwriter, amazing guitar player, just amazing all-around good dude, producer, engineer, the whole enchilada. I mean, he is the full package today. Chuck, thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure, Eric. Thanks for
We're
having me.
We're going to ask you lots of questions today.
I look forward to it, man.
I want to introduce this guy in the proper way here. So, first off, what you heard Chuck doing there is just a smidgen of what this guy can do, but like I said, just amazing songwriter. In fact, more known for songwriting than anything else. But let me just give you just a little, and this is written down here because I don't want to miss a bit, and I know that there's a ton of stuff that we're missing here. But so Chuck Jones's compositions embody the spirit and soul of his hometown, Memphis, Tennessee. He's had songs recorded by artists as diverse as Patti Labelle. Now listen to this. Ronnie Milsap, Shelby Lynne, Ledoux, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, Charlie Daniels, Deana Carter, Reba McEntire, Peter Cetera, and I know the guy's being humble because there's a lot more than that. John Barry's version of Your Love Amazes Me hit #1, and also won Song of the Year from Country Radio Music Awards and the Music City News Country Songwriter Awards. Chuck has also had #1s with Diamond Rio's Love a Little Stronger and Billy Dean's It's What I Do. He's had over 140 songs recorded. That's big time, my friends. Multiple top 10s and various other charting singles on country and pop radio during his tenure in Nashville. He recently started his own publishing company, Jonesin for a Hit, which I freaking love that name. That's amazing. Which has garnered recordings on a variety of artists from Montgomery, Gentry, and Trace Adkins to Rascal Flatts, Jake Owens, Randy Houser, and Robert Counts. Resides in Nashville, Tennessee. And in fact, the music that you heard just before this, that was me and Chuck. So,
That's right.
Chuck, thank you for that because we're playing the heck out of that.
It's E on guitar for all that stuff. Eric here.
And I asked Chuck right before we went on, I said, have you ever counted how many albums you were on? Like how many cuts that you have on how many albums? And we just were kind of not even writing anything down, but literally we stopped counting at 40 to somewhere between 40 and 50 million. 40 and 50 million songs.
People used to buy albums.
Well, my goodness, man. That is super impressive, right? So, Chuck, I'm gonna hit you with a ton of questions today here in just one moment. I want to direct folks really quickly before we start here. We've got folks on Facebook today and YouTube, and we have Instagram. But Instagram, you know the drill. We can't look at the questions there, so you're gotta head over to Facebook and YouTube on my pages there. We do have a giveaway today. And what I want you to do for this giveaway is, I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is because it seems that some folks, I'm saying it, but they're not doing it. So the description is it's in the description of the video. Like what to do is in the description of the video. It's so easy to win, my friends. Like literally we gave a lifetime of lessons away last week, Unstoppable Guitar System 365, and literally I think there was one person to choose from just because everybody was doing it wrong. So it's literally that easy to win. Okay, so do that. There's one other piece of business I wanted to cover. Oh yes, Super Chat. So those of you, we're going to all be going to lunch today, Chuck and me and the boys. We're going to be doing that right after this. So the Super Chat is open on YouTube. If you want to donate to the lunch fund, love you. If you don't, that's fine too. We would love to get to your questions today, but you know where to do that. It's only on YouTube, not on Facebook or Instagram. We don't have any Rate My Lick today, but here is the deal. As per usual, if you send us a video, this is a new segment that we've been doing, Chuck, where the kids, I call my students kids, they're up to 80 years old, but they're still kids to me, as I am a kid. And
hard, aren't we all?
Yeah. And so we got this segment called Rate My Lick that basically they're sending in whatever it is that they're doing, that they're working on that day.
That's awesome.
And then we'll give some constructive criticism. We'll say what's good about it, what isn't good about it, so that they can improve. And so, friends, that's still open. The only thing you need to do is notify us in all the different ways that you can notify us. But basically, a question or a lick that you're doing, we'll have it on the program here. And yeah, okay, cool. We're going to get to some questions on Facebook and YouTube here in just a moment. But first, I have some pretty pointed questions for Chuck here. And my guess is that you guys are going to be asking a lot of these questions. So we're gonna talk about those first. And then you've got a few songs for us to hear.
Yeah,
today.
man, I'll play as much as you want.
Yeah.
Or as little.
I love Chuck because he loves to perform, he loves to play guitar, and he's just like a true musician. And we're going to hear a bit of his story today, which is going to help you guys understand like the journey that it takes. You know, when people hear 40 or 50 million cuts, or 40, 50 million album cuts, right? People say,
wow, sales. You haven't gotten 50 million cuts.
Right, that'd be a lot. You know, people automatically, I think they think, oh man, lucky guy. Well, of course, he lives in Nashville and he whatever the story is. But we're going to see here that it's Chuck's story is like any story that of someone who's succeeded but has had to work hard, because bottom line, that's what it comes down to. It's grit and it's grind, and you develop these tools. And in fact, your beginnings on guitar were quite humble, if I remember in one of the stories that you told me. Can you tell me about the first guitar that you were telling me about that ended up not faring so well? It's probably
I was just a toddler then.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a toy guitar.
Sure, right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the one that I must have been, I guess, 2 or 3 years old. Ever since a baby, ever since I was old enough to talk, that's all I ever wanted. If Christmas or a birthday came around, it was a new guitar, you know. Mm-hmm. And never got a real one until I was about 8 or 10 years old. But yeah, they had bought me, and my mom and dad bought me just a toy guitar. It had strings and everything on it. Yeah. Probably made out of, not cardboard, but you know what I mean, some kind of really cheap plywood or something.
Right, yeah.
I must have spilled my bottle on it or something. I don't know.
Right.
At any rate, it got dirty, and I put it in the washing machine.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Right.
And it didn't
last.
It
so
didn't
long.
make it out
no.
of the. Didn't make it through that.
So what? So you're walking around with a guitar toy guitar at 3, and you were obsessed with this because you told me afterwards that once you got rid of that guitar, that every year afterwards you were asking mom and dad for a guitar.
For
right?
a real one, yeah.
What was the obsession? Like, who were you watching? Were you watching somebody on TV that you were obsessing over playing guitar and you wanted to be like?
Man, I don't want to date myself, but we didn't have a television in my house till I was like 12 years old. You know? Mm-hmm. And but we did listen to a lot of radio, you know, early on. And I remember the first car I remember my parents had was like, my dad had a green 57 Chevy. Oh, wow. And the first radio I remember listening to was the radio in that Chevy.
Yeah.
And that was back in the day when, you know, you could hear all kinds of music on the same channel. Yeah. It wasn't so genre specific as it is these days.
Really?
No,
I never knew that.
One station you could hear, pop, R&B, country. You know, you might hear Elvis one minute, you might hear the Everly Brothers, and then they do, you know, a Ray Charles tune or something like that. You know? Yeah. And then, you know, they might even mix in a little bit of what we used to call bubble gum back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just mainly it was the radio, riding in the car. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what caused me to be so obsessed, because I had 3 siblings, right? 2 brothers and a sister, and one brother actually and my sister both played piano, but they were never wanted to do that.
Right.
But I could never see myself doing anything else.
Yeah.
From just an early age. I was a hair-lipped with it, Eric.
I love it.
As we say.
I love it. I wish that I had been obsessed with it as early on as you were. When did you actually start playing?
Well, I remember the first guitar, one of the first guitars I got that you could actually chord. Yeah. And make chords on and stuff. It was an old Framus, I believe, Framus. Framus, wish I still had it, man. But it was actually, it was playable. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it probably cost my folks $20 in those days, you know. But I remember I first got it, I couldn't play a lick on it. So I could just, you know, strum the open chords. I walked around the house just strumming the open strings. Yeah. And so it wasn't long I begged my mom, and she finally acquiesced and got me lessons at the music store down the street in Memphis. So. Yeah. So they started showing me how to play chords. And
at what age was that?
Probably about 9 or 10, I think. Okay. I guess. You know.
That's great. Yeah. So, man, that's an early start right there.
Yeah. And then I really hammered at it for a year or two, and then I just kind of got interested in something else. And and waited till I was around 14 to get back into it, actually.
Did you have a good teacher to start off?
Yeah, I think
loving
I did.
teacher?
I did, I believe.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first things, the thing that probably discouraged me in those days as a young boy was probably the F chord.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God.
Like
right.
I learned all the others, and I was like, wait a minute, what's up with this chord? Man, that hurts.
And you thought it was just you, right? I tell folks that all the time. This is why, you know, being with other musicians, whether it's just one other musicians, the more the merrier. A band situation, a guitar meetup, or whatever is so valuable because there's so many myths that
Sure,
people
yeah.
believe, and you don't. You know, when you believe in a myth, you don't know it's a myth. You believe it as truth. So you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
And if you think that your fingers are too fat or this, that, or the other thing, or that you can't play a particular something, then you say, well, I can't. This is done. I'm not a guitar player. When in fact that's not true at all. Everybody is a guitar player at heart if they have the desire to do it. And everybody has a problem with the F chord, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they do, man. I'm sure.
So you probably thought, dear God. So when you were learning, you were probably like, I'm terrible at this because you didn't have other musicians to bounce that
I didn't
off
have
of,
anybody
or
to tell
the
me.
internet.
Yeah, I didn't have anybody to show me that hey, there is a way to play it without a bar.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
My teacher didn't go that far, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, he probably showed me that simple one, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, you know, I've always been one of those guys. It's all or nothing, man.
Yes.
If I can't do the whole thing, then I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So that discouraged me actually for a year or so, and then I met a buddy that had a Fender Mustang, and he was playing blues and learning how to play pentatonic scales, and that just really got me all the way back in. So hadn't been out since.
And you were
that
how
was
old
about
then?
13
12?
or 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's about when it hit for me too. Just listening to, you know, hearing, watching videos on TV and just being like, oh my gosh, this like something just overtakes you, you know.
Sure, yeah.
God, amazing. So tell me, can you give us like a 30,000-foot view of your journey? So you started really catching the bug there, right? The guitar bug. You grew up in Memphis, so you played in some bands in Memphis.
Starting when I was, I would jam with buddies when I was 14, 15. And about 16, I got in a band with my brother, and I was the only real musician in the band at that time. And I wasn't a real musician, but my first real band that actually performed as a professional gig was I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
But in between there, I actually started taking some classical guitar lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in high school, my brother played classical guitar and took lessons.
Right.
He eventually became a doctor.
Yeah.
But he was obsessed with classical guitar for a while there, and he got me into it. And I still play. I still pull some of those pieces out and go over them occasionally. It's great for finger picking.
It is,
and for the reading aspect.
Isn't it?
Of
It's a whole nother world. Like
it
when you're
is,
sitting there in front of a piece of music and you have to take this piece of music, like what we were doing just there, right? It's like you've got
was improvisation.
Improvisation, but you have some patterns in your head. You got some feels, and a lot of it just kind of comes out, like we're talking right now. But when you're talking about classical guitar, there's a proper way to sit, a proper way to hold the left hand, proper way to hold the right.
I don't do any of that.
You don't do any of that, right? But if you're strict, like I took classical lessons in college, and they're real strict on all the bits and pieces. And there's reasons why in regards to like don't plant your pinky on the top of the guitar because back in the day you didn't have microphones, and if you're playing a concert hall, you need that guitar to sing out. So placing your pinky on the top of the guitar is going to dull the sound. I didn't know for years why that was. I'm like, why that's such a goofy rule. And then I started messing with it, realizing, oh wow, must be the reason.
Plus, as a classical guitarist, they're moving their hand around for different. They get back here, get that real bright sound, and move it up here, so they have to be mobile. Basically.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did that for a little bit, and actually my only year of college, which is actually a half year, was pursuing classical guitar as a profession. Basically, I wanted to be a concert classical guitarist.
And this was in Memphis?
Yeah, I was going to Memphis State. It's now University of Memphis.
Right.
But and I was, I would do the thing. I would rehearse. I'd sit there playing scales and arpeggios and pieces for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then
very meditative.
Very meditative.
Yeah.
But at one point I realized, and at the same time I was still doing some blues and R&B stuff and on electric, and I realized I did not have me particularly just didn't have the physicality for like Andre Segovia, who had all that power in his playing.
Right.
He had meat hooks for hands. Talking about people with two bigger fingers, he had bigger hands than anybody. Just
really?
about,
Yeah.
And the guy who's single-handedly responsible for saving the classical guitar from obscurity in the classical world. You know? He inspired composers of the day to compose for it, which brought it back into the fore. But I would be sitting there practicing for hours doing that, and I was like, you know what? My fingers, my muscles just aren't developing like they should be to do that kind of thing. And maybe that was an excuse looking back, and I really just was kind of, you know what? You don't have to work so hard to play this blues stuff.
Yeah, you know? It's really, isn't that interesting? And I love that you just flipped that, because there are folks at home, and I know this because I've done it, and I don't know of a guitar player who hasn't done this, where you make a decision and you say, no, I should be further along than I am. And you go, and what I was going to ask you was, what did you measure that by? Because, like, how can you measure that? But it's what we say, but in reality, you go, you had an affinity probably more for R&B and blues and that sort of thing, to where you're just having so much fun, and you're in a club, and you can react with people, and it's not like classical guitar. You're alone out there.
It's a pretty lonely life.
It's lonely. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, the top classical guitar player it's a lonely life.
It's a real pyramid shape, you know, as opposed to the pop or the rock and pop world. I came up more in the rock world than the pop world, but it wasn't that pyramidical. You know, like in the classical world, and I don't know if it's still this way or not. There's all kinds of great classical guitarists on YouTube these days that I see. Seekus Guitars is a good place to go. But when I was a kid, man, there were like this handful of guys at the top, and then everybody else was down here. And the only guys that really made any decent money were the guys at the top.
The very top,
5 top players in the world.
Yeah, right.
Other guys were just hitting the road to make, try to sell out a local theater, small theater. You
exactly.
know.
Or play weddings or...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of that. Yeah. Which I've done that as well as a rocker. But
So now you had an interesting, maybe, and I don't know if this was the first gig, but you're somewhere around one of your first gigs. As I understand it, you had a band that played in a strip club. Is that right?
That was my first professional gig where we got paid.
A legit strip club, right?
The first club I played in, I didn't find it. One of the guys in the band just came up and said one day, "Hey man, I got us a gig, and it's this strip club over on Jackson Avenue."
Right.
And so but it wasn't like, I guess strip clubs in those days weren't like I assume they are now.
Right.
Married 32 years, guys. 33 years. So I don't go to those places, but there was one stripper.
Yes.
Yeah, and you would think, well, why would they have a band play in a strip club?
Right. Because there was one stripper.
One stripper. Yeah.
she was tired. His wife.
And this was prior to the days when they had DJs in clubs.
Right.
You know, so these days they just have a DJ and they're spinning music all night long.
Sure.
But she wasn't dancing to our music at all. I mean, I guess they turned on a radio or a record player or something on our breaks, and we would take, we played a 4-hour gig that night, just one night.
Right.
We played a 4-hour gig, and she would we'd take a 15-minute break every hour. She would come up and dance for 15 minutes.
Okay.
Guys in the audience would
smoke break,
throw dollar bills at her. I felt sorry for her, man. It was like such a sad. She was the only girl in the place, literally.
Yes. Oh, brother. So from Memphis, you said what? You at some point you were playing in some R&B bands. You were playing some blues bands.
Yeah, man.
You were playing some like all black clubs. Did you
say
that, right?
I was the only white guy in a black band for a couple of gigs. And, we did a couple of shows in just an all black club. And, parts of Memphis. Growing up as a white kid back in the in the '60s. Yeah. I never found until I was hanging out with these guys.
Yeah.
That was an interesting experience. But I grew up, I cut my teeth on that music because a lot of it came out of Memphis.
Yes, indeed.
B.B. King started there as a DJ on WDIA, the black channel in town, black station in town. Yeah. And so we had some awesome music coming over the airways in those days, and that's kind of what I was influenced by. Yeah. I was playing in back in those days, a lot of rock bands with my buddies, 4-piece, occasionally a 5-piece, mostly 4-piece, 2 guitars and a bass and a drum. Yeah. And we'd play frat parties, the occasional club. Occasionally we'd find some guy that would be a booking agent who would book us all throughout the South, And then through my 20s, I played in everything from rock bands to acoustic solo gigs. I held down a solo gig at the local Admiral Benbow Inn on Summer Avenue for about 6 months one year, 5 nights a week.
Right, just acoustic guitar and
just
singing.
me and acoustic guitar. Had a harmonica rack, did some of that. And
See, so it's about being eager, and it's about being available, and like, I'm gonna play that gig, I'm gonna play that gig, I'm gonna play that gig, I'm gonna play, you know, right?
And, if you're really coming up trying to make money or make a living as a guitarist and a singer, in those days anyway, you had to do whatever was around. So somebody say, "Hey, can you do a solo gig?" It's like, "Well, I've never done one, but I know a lot of songs. I bet I can learn a few more." And that's what I do. I sit down with my record player and learn the songs. Pre-YouTube guys. So.
Yes, right.
And but it was always fun.
Yes.
Nothing I ever did was really a drag. It was always, I always had a blast doing it.
Yeah, that means you're doing it right, because guitar should be fun, right? It's
absolutely,
man.
Absolutely.
That's why it's play guitar.
Yeah.
It's not work guitar, it's play guitar. So from there, you're in some R&B bands, some rock bands, some blues bands, right? And then at some point you said, I've got to get out of here. I've got to move on. What sparked that, and where did you go? What did you do?
Well, I had been in a band in Memphis that we were working steady. We had we'd invested in a van and a PA and a trailer.
You said it was like
it was one of the custom pleated silver sparkle PA system. That's the PA that me and my duo buddy Everett Brown bought. And when we moved out to California, LA, before I went out there again, when I was 24, I was 20 years old when we did that.
Okay.
We bought a van and drove out to LA, trying to make it. And stayed for about 3 months, and then he got back together with his wife, so I ended up coming back too. But then I went out. Again when I was 24 and to attend the Guitar Institute of Technology. Is that what you were getting to?
Yeah, any of that. Yeah, definitely. The Guitar Institute, yes.
Well, it was called GIT at the time.
Right.
Started by Howard Roberts, and even then they had a bass institute of technology, a percussion institute, and a keyboard institute. BIT, PIT, KIT. It was all confusing, so they eventually changed the name to MIT. Right. And immediately got sued by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Of course. And so I think now they call it the Musicians Institute.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And, I don't know where it's at now. I'm pretty sure it's still in business.
I think there's one in L.A., and I think there's one in maybe Atlanta or Chamblee.
No
or
kidding.
Yeah,
I didn't
Georgia.
realize they were franchising out. Man.
Well, I know there was two of them, because actually that was one of the schools that I was highly considering at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went, but I wasn't going to go to the LA one. I was probably going to do the Georgia one, be close.
It was probably accredited when you were looking at that one.
Yeah, I think it was.
So it wasn't even accredited when I went. I was there in 1980.
Right.
There was no college credit or anything. You just give them your money and you go learn how to play guitar, man.
Yeah, trust us.
I got my diploma. It said certified guitar player.
Certified.
They stole that from Chet Atkins.
Still what?
I think they stole that from Chet Atkins.
Right. Beautiful. So did you learn a lot in school?
I did, man. I did. Now, to get into the place was actually a little stringent. You had to know, all the 5 positions, scale positions, modes, the chords up the neck, the cage. You had to know all of that.
That's great.
You take an entrance exam.
Sure.
And send in a cassette tape with some of your playing on it. But once I got there, yeah, man, it was really fun for a kid. I was 24 years old.
Yeah.
Living in I was actually living in Pacoima, which was about a half-hour drive from Hollywood, but hanging out in Hollywood every day.
Oh, man.
Playing in some of their clubs at night with some bands. And so, yeah, man, there was some great teachers there. This was right after the Van Halen double tapping stuff. I think that Van Halen record had come out in like 78 or 9 or something.
Oh, so you were at Musicians Institute?
1980.
Oh,
1980.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I went out there. And so they had a jazz course, blues course, country. You had to take it all, And I mean, they would really, burrow down. I still got the big binders with a lot of the lessons in it.
Right.
But one of my favorite ones was the jazz course. They got into Charlie Parker Bird.
Yes.
And some Joe Pass stuff.
Yes.
All kinds of cool stuff. And the country stuff was fun too. They would show you some bend licks and that kind of thing. And the blues stuff, I had been playing some blues since I was a teenager anyway.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up cutting my teeth on the Jimi Hendrix and the British Invaders, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton. But and the bands I was in, that was the music we would play.
Right.
We would play those guys, man. And so anyway.
So one of the things you learned there was some jazz and voice leading and that sort of thing, didn't you?
Yeah. The Charlie Parker class was really cool because it was just his basically showing you his. They had broken it down to where like Charlie Parker only had I think it was 140 licks, and he just used those in different combinations.
Wow.
Now I think that probably was an oversimplification
Yeah,
looking
sure.
back
No,
on
but
it.
yeah.
But it put it into perspective because I've noticed that since then in my own playing is that, you know, I'll learn a lick that I really like off of a record or something. I've been doing that since I was a kid. And then every now and then I'll just think of that lick while I'm playing a solo and I'll play that lick. Yeah. You know, and I'll string some of them together. And hopefully along the way you get enough of those to where, and you know the scales and the harmonic theory enough to where you can just ad-lib, improvise without having to think about what you're going to play every second. It just comes out. You know, that's where you want to get to, is that point where it just flows out of you, you know. Yeah. But anyway, what were you asking me? You said the lick stuff? That were
I'm leading some here with this because you have a version, right, of a Blackbird?
Right,
that you do that's kind of jazzy?
Right, yeah,
that
absolutely.
Has some voice, some Joe Pass kind of voice leading. Could you do something like that for us?
Here.
Chuck was noodling with this earlier, and I was like, that is cool.
I haven't played. I went over it last night a couple of times. I haven't played this and sang it in quite a while. So I want to try to play it and sing it at the same time.
Even if it's just a piece of it, you know.
Okay.
You don't have to do the whole thing.
And what got me into I've done a few arrangements of things like this and written a few things. And what really got me into this within the last decade or so was a book I found that I had bought when I was a teenager called Joe Pass Chord Melody Solos.
Okay, yeah.
And it was just Joe Pass. It was 6 or 7 songs in there of Joe Pass. He probably improvised the things.
Right.
But it had all these... Sorry. That kind of stuff, you know. And I just fell in love with that kind of just learning how to do that stuff just as a Zen form of meditation, you know. Instead of just sitting watching TV at night, I'd sit and learn those pieces and just 4 bars at a time or 2 bars at a time. Yeah. But and I did it enough to where I started incorporating some of those changes into some of my live playing and started just trying to write some little instrumental pieces. But anyway, I came up with this little version of Blackbird. Let's see. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life you were only waiting for this moment to be free.
That's beautiful. Oh, I love that.
Kind of
because you can hear the melody in there, but with adding sevenths.
Right, a lot of major 7, minor 7 things with, which are passing chords. And studying the Joe Pass chord melody book, I learned how he actually had several different passing chord pieces that he would use over and over again.
Yeah.
Back to the thing about learning those, having a certain amount of licks, and you just kind of learn different ways to put them together.
Yeah, I love that.
A lot of passing chords too. It's like all that just to get from that E minor back down to that C major 7.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. I don't know. There's something about those jazz chord when passing chords like that really just tickle my ear. I don't know. Some people it's boring to them, but I really dig it.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about stuff like that is like you can hear Blackbird in there, and you have the standard how the song should go, but then you have these other like ornaments that kind of set you off, like right? So like what we're hearing, but then it comes back, and I think that's what makes it exciting for folks like us who have been around music for a little bit longer. It's like for the same reason children listen to really elementary melodies and chords in the beginning is because it's just like the same reason that they eat simple foods is because their palates are not matured yet.
Sure.
That's why we eat truffles when we're older, and as a kid we would never eat truffle. Anything,
Didn't care for fine wine at an early age either.
No. So like that's how I look at that stuff, and it's like you start getting bored, and you go, well, oh man, that's really cool. I can still hear the melody in there, the chord progression. Yeah.
But now the Joe Pass stuff is like you couldn't hear the melody. I mean, and these were just like he had one like a little intro. Look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten. They go on, but the melody's not in the chords he's playing.
Right.
But the chords support the melody. They support the melody.
Say, the harmonic structure of the
that confused me early on because I thought, well, chord melody, that means you're playing the melody but putting chords under it.
Right.
But that's not how Joe Pass approached it.
Right.
It was a whole different thing for him. It was just like this incredible alphabet soup.
Yes.
That was just fascinating to me, man.
Oh, I love that. Well, that sounds like that you could use that in a lot of different things too.
Yeah.
So tell me about where you started. Like, what was Nashville? What was the call to Nashville? I mean, obviously in the same state, right?
Right.
But what was the call to
Not
Nashville?
too far from home. Yeah.
And how did you make that transition? And was that you went from L.A. back to Memphis, and then from Memphis to Nashville?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I went back to Memphis after my first foray out to L.A. with my buddy in a van and a custom PA.
Right.
We made it back to Memphis, and I had every intention of putting a band together, getting enough money to move back out to L.A. Because I had absolutely zero interest in country music at this point in time. And
what kind of band?
Although I love some of the classical country music back then.
Right.
Well, it would have been a rock band.
Yeah.
Rock bands.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
just playing the rock and the radio hits of the day.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of rock on the radio,
Sure,
just regular rock radio back then. There was this one band, Avenue, that we had got our act together enough to actually, get enough gigs, pay somebody to make an EP on us. We wrote some songs, produced an EP, and started shopping it around. Another band that was friends of ours had a video on MTV. We thought, they can do it, we can do it. So we went for it.
What was that band?
It was called The Breaks.
The Breaks.
Yeah, okay. Suzanne Jerome and her husband Pat Taylor.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Pat Taylor and Suzanne Taylor. Suzanne Jerome Taylor, I guess.
Yeah.
But Pat passed away a while back from cancer, unfortunately. But they were a great band. A couple of another buddy of mine, I think Rob Cottle was Russ Cottle was the drummer in that band as well. He's in Nashville now. A lot of those Memphis cats moved over to Nashville along the way too.
Right.
But so I was just kind of, we couldn't get any steam behind our EP or us as a band except for club gigs.
Right.
And I was like, guys, I was in my early 30s. I was like 31, 32 by then.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, I need to really. Well, what did it was I was in it was actually after that band, I was still trying to make a living, and I was in a band with a guy named Trey Bruce.
Okay.
Whose dad was Ed Bruce, who wrote "Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys."
Wow.
And a lot of other hits back in the 70s. That was Willie Nelson.
Yeah, sure.
But
as a kid, that was like that, and a bunch of other we called them trucker songs.
Right. Yeah.
My dad, we'd go on the road with my dad, and we'd drive. He drove a truck, and we'd literally just listen to these songs over and over and over.
Yeah. I love it, man. Yeah. So Trey was a drummer in this band, but he wrote songs as well, and he wound up. His dad he grew up in Memphis with his mom. His dad was divorced from his mom early on.
Yeah.
But he wound up moving over to Nashville to kind of pursue songwriting.
Yeah.
But still coming back to Memphis and playing in our band on the weekends. So he invited me over to he and his wife's apartment one weekend. They had a little baby too. Just to write a song, write some songs, and take a look around. And so I did. I came over, and I was shacking up at the time with the girl that eventually became my wife, has been for 32 years.
Who's a doll?
Yeah, she is a doll, Becky. But anyway, so I came back home while I was over here on that trip that weekend. We got up on Saturday morning and had coffee, and he just took me for a ride around Music Row. And man, just started pointing out all of the cool buildings down there. And actually, it was mostly just houses and studios, that kind of thing. So that's Warner Brothers Music. There's RCA, there's CBS. There's that's such and such publishing company. It was just these two streets, actually 3 or 4 streets, house after house of an industry. Yeah. And I was like, well, dang, that's what's missing in Memphis is an industry. Yeah. You gotta be accepted into an industry either in New York, LA, or Nashville out of there.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder to do than if you go there. So, man, I fell in love with it. Memphis hadn't had that since the 60s.
Yeah.
50s, Sun Records got it off the ground with Elvis, Carl Perkins.
So
Roy Orbison, all those
16th and
guys.
17th Avenue is what we're talking about here. In
Music Row, it's referred to as,
That's my first apartment was on 16th Avenue.
No kidding.
Right in the middle of all that, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think it was $450 a month for. I mean, could you imagine that? $350 a month. It was 2 bedroom. I mean, yeah. We got broken into many times.
Don't find those deals these days.
No.
But anyway, so Memphis didn't have an industry.
Yeah.
And so I went back to Memphis after that weekend was over, and I just walked in the door and I said to Becky, I said, "Hey, I'm going to Nashville. You want to come?" And she had a great job. She'd been working for 8 years. She was high up in the company.
Yeah.
She said, "Well," I didn't have to talk her into it. A month later, we pulled up and loaded up the truck and we moved to Beverly. And man, I just kind of scrimped and scraped for a couple of years.
Right.
Parking cars for manpower or waiting tables. But Becky,
You mean you didn't, because you were a musician, you had all these years of experience, you didn't come and just start writing songs, and they didn't just
they didn't just
weren't
throw the
looking for
doors
you?
open immediately, no. But I did have an in, which was Trey's dad, Ed, and Trey himself.
Yeah.
Like I say, I owe Trey everything because he's the catalyst that got me to move over here in the first place.
Right.
And Trey went on to have a really successful songwriting production career, still here doing it. Trey Bruce.
Yeah.
He was one of the first producers of Trace Adkins.
Okay.
He and Scott Hendricks produced those records together.
And he's still doing stuff
and
in town, right?
he owned his own publishing company for a while. He is, yeah.
Yeah, because
sure.
I hear Melissa talk about him all the time.
Yeah, we
Trey Bruce.
do gigs together occasionally
Okay.
and stuff. But so anyway, I get over here and actually my girlfriend at the time, Becky, she got a job through Ed's contacts as a receptionist at what was called Tree International at the time, which was the largest independent publishing company, a country publisher in the world. It was the largest independent publisher, period. And so she got a job working on the front desk just as a receptionist, right? And they figured out pretty quick that she was smarter than just to be left at the front desk. So they moved her in the copyright department. And she was there for 14 or 15 years all told, I guess. And at one point, by the time not long before she left, we had a daughter and she backed off a bunch, but she was running the copyright department by the time she left there. And that was the copyrights for all of CBS bought Tree International, and then Sony bought CBS, Then Sony bought Michael Jackson's catalog. It became Sony ATV, which had the Beatles catalog and all that in it.
Wow.
While she was working there, she handled the catalogs of everybody from not just country catalogs. They did all the New York publishing and everything. She was handling everybody from John Lennon's catalog to Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen. R&B stuff, the Solar catalog with Babyface, King, and L.A. Reid. So, she handled all these big, high-profile catalogs during those days.
Yeah. So so how long were you in Nashville before you got your first writing deal?
2 years, which was pretty exceptional even for those days, I think.
Yeah.
And I was just...
And you were playing writers' nights and just...
No, the writers' nights weren't a thing then.
They weren't
This
a
was
thing,
like
really?
80... let's see, we moved here in 80... Moved here in 87.
Okay.
Got married in 88. And then I got my first publishing deal in 89.
Okay.
September of 89.
I moved here in 90, so...
Did you really?
That's
Wow,
when
man,
just,
I didn't realize
just
you'd
started
been
to
here
dig
that
in, yeah.
So yeah, man, 89, and what helped more than anything was Becky's job at the publishing company.
Yeah.
Tree International, now Sony ATV. So I would just sneak in the back door. Her office was right inside the back door. So I would come in there. I would come pick her up from work at the end of the day, and I'd come an hour early and hang out there. We'd leave the door open, and all the writers there loved her,
Yeah.
And so she was real personable, and so they'd stick their head in the door, and she'd say, "Hey, this is my boyfriend Chuck. He's writing songs."
Yeah.
I met a couple of guys there, Ray Kennedy and Bobby David, who were staff writers.
Yeah.
Who took me under their wing. You won't be able to do that these days, unfortunately.
No.
They took me under their wing, and Ray actually became a country artist during the 90s who had a couple of hits.
Right.
Women Gonna Be the Death of Me, But What a Way to Go was one of
Yeah.
them. And Scars was the other one.
Okay.
And Ray was a great engineer, producer, but a killer songwriter singer and guitar player. He had an
Right.
incredible guitar collection.
Yeah.
And he had a studio, and the whole bottom floor, main floor of his house was rigged up as a studio.
Okay.
You know, so he'd invite me over there to write with him. I'd go over there to write, and he'd be demoing the kind of thing I do these days.
Right.
We'd be demoing. He'd have the Lynne drum pulled up, getting the drum pattern going on. And by the end of the day, we had a demo of the song. So
Yeah.
after working with them about 6 months, they took me into Tree, where my wife worked, and
Yeah.
were close to getting me signed there as
Wow.
as a writer. And then the guy that was going to sign me left to go somewhere else, and I wound up signing shortly after that with a different company. But
Yeah.
those guys, I have a lot. I owe a lot to those guys.
Yeah.
Kennedy and Bobby David.
So you had been writing for how long professionally before you saw your first? How long before you saw your first cut? Do you remember?
First cut wasn't that long.
Really? Yeah.
Probably because automatically when you get
And
signed,
what we mean by a cut is when
a recording.
When somebody, basically, in a nutshell, the way it works here in Nashville is you work for a publisher, you write songs, you're getting what's called a draw, so it's kind of like a salary.
It's an advance. You got to pay it back.
And it's an advance, I should say. That's why I say it's kind of like a salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an advance. So really, you're pretty much writing for free.
Yeah.
And then when you write something that somebody's interested in, because there are people that will peddle your songs, they're professional people.
Song pluggers.
Yeah,
call them.
and they will go to producers and writers and they will peddle your songs and say, this is a good one, and then eventually you get your name known in Nashville if you're a great writer. And then that artist decides to record that song. They record the song for free, of course, and then the proceeds, that there's a cut, there's an amount of pennies. But when you're talking about,
it's called a cut.
Right.
That's when they actually go into the studio and record the record.
Right.
And where that comes from is the old days of acetate.
Right.
They would actually cut grooves in the disc.
Yeah.
They would cut it, and they would
Yeah.
say, "Did you cut that record yet?"
yeah,
And so, when you get it, and they still use the term cut, even
Yeah.
though it's all digital and has been for
Right,
25 years,
yeah,
But that's where cut comes from. And,
Yeah.
and so the cycle was, as a writer in a publishing company,
Mm-hmm.
you get your song put on hold.
yep,
That's what a hold is when your publisher or you or somebody plays it for an artist or a producer or a record
Yeah.
label, A&R people or a record label, and one of them likes it well enough to think they might cut it, they'll say,
Right.
we want to hold that.
Yes.
In other words, what that means is don't
let
pitch it for
anybody
anybody
else,
else.
yeah.
Don't pitch it or plug it to anybody else.
right.
And so,
And this is all handshake.
all handshake, and you're kind of obligated to do that if you
Right.
want them to come back to you again.
Exactly.
Sometime. So I've had songs on hold for a year before that never did get recorded by
Yes.
that person. And
Yeah.
I just had to take them out of circulation. So.
Yep, yep.
So anyway, I had got my first cut pretty early on because one of my publishers, actually the first publisher deal I was signed to, dude, it was the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
89 is when I signed. The 90s were like a heyday in Nashville.
Exactly.
I mean, it
yeah.
was 10% plus revenue gains every year. It was like the paradigm of a successful business
Wow.
climate,
Yeah, sure.
And so good that record labels were having to open up offshoots and add
Yeah.
separate A&R staffs.
It was
and
party
stuff.
time in the
Party time, man. So, and I was fortunate enough, my first publishing deal was owned by, it was a co-venture with 4 different music producers attached to it.
Wow. Yeah.
There was Jimmy Bowen, who he's been the president of every record label.
Yeah.
There was. He was running Capitol at the time, Capitol Records. James Stroud, who went on as a producer to sell over 1 billion records and run DreamWorks.
How many?
Over 1 billion.
Are
He
you
well,
serious?
so does Jimmy
Wow.
Bowen. Tony Brown, also another producer.
Yeah, I
they
know
sold
Tony,
over
yeah.
$1 billion in sales. Their records did.
Wow.
James Stroud was attached to it, and then Chuck Howard was the young guy who signed me actually.
Yeah.
And he was just starting out as a producer at the time, and he was producing artists like John Berry and Billy Dean. And then the other producer was a guy named Bill Ham, who lived down in Texas.
Right.
And Bill Ham he started out as the road manager for ZZ Top, became their manager, became their producer, and became their publisher.
Okay.
Sewed up all their publishing early on. Bill was a smart guy.
Yeah.
So this was in the 90s, and he still had all of ZZ Top back then.
Yeah.
We got free tickets every time they came
Oh
in town.
my God. That's amazing.
So
yeah,
I
go
had
ahead.
4 producers attached to my deal. So first cut I ever got was Jimmy Bowen cut on a band that he happened to be going to the studio with. We called them inside cuts.
Right.
And it still goes on more than ever, I'm sure. But
Right. Yeah.
it's like if an artist or producer has 2 songs, one in each hand,
Yeah.
this song is just as good as this song.
Yeah.
But this song,
They own.
they've got a piece of it, or
Sure.
their publisher or the record companies they work for attached publisher has some
Right.
that song's going to win out.
Yes.
It's just business, man.
Yes,
that's the
yep.
business side of the music.
Yep,
business.
yep.
It's always been there. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, and if that's on your side, you're not going to complain about it. If it's not on your side, you're going to complain about it.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like I see it all over the industry.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I wasn't complaining at all in the 90s.
Right,
So.
right. So what was your first big success then in Nashville?
Man, the first thing that really kind of got me a name was something that didn't actually make me a ton of money, but it got a lot of PR. And that was one of the first big cuts I had, was a duet with Ronnie Milsap and Patti Labelle, a song called Love Certified. If you dig deep enough on the web, you might be able to find a live version of them doing that. It's just awesome. It's some award show back then, but it was on Ronnie's Milsap's last record for Capitol Records.
Okay.
And originally it was on hold for a duet with Ronnie and Aretha Franklin.
Right.
And it was on hold for them for 2 years. But the record, she was on a different label, and the labels could never get together.
Right.
So much to my chagrin, they ended up bumping it from Aretha and bringing Patti Labelle in, who I love her as well.
Right.
Because she was on the same label. There was no conflict there.
Yeah.
So, and she ended up, so they cut it, they recorded it. I actually had played, me and my co-writer had done the demo on like a little Akai 12 track.
Right.
In our writers' rooms. And I played guitar and programmed, and he played on the keyboards, and we sang it. And so Ronnie Milsap's studio was right next door to our publishing company.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
And so, and I knew him, and I knew his producer, Rob Galbraith. And so they asked me to play electric guitar on it, which I ended up doing. I ended up playing guitar on that cut. But when they did it, they did the record, and it turned out great. And then they flew Patti Labelle in to do her singing on it. And the day they flew her in, they called Entertainment Tonight, so it was a whole big deal. And after they did it that night, they had a big party.
Right.
And so it was a big public big PR thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I got to be a part of all that.
That's
me and my co-writer were all up in the middle of it. So we were in the paper the next day. Next thing you know, you're a player.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, Chuck, would you play one of your hits here in just a moment here? I want to. There's one or two other questions while you're grabbing your guitar, getting a drink, and all that stuff. But I got a couple other questions here for you that are more pointed. And then also, folks, do not forget that we're doing yet another giveaway today. Lifetime membership to UGS/365. The directions for that are in the description of the video on Facebook and YouTube. Part of that includes going to chuckjonesmusic.com. Okay, so that's the post. What's that?
The directions are on the post.
The directions are on the post. Okay, I apologize. So go to that post that's right there within Instagram. We have that on Facebook too, or no?
Yeah, just Instagram.
Just Instagram. Okay, thank you, Mike. So just on Instagram, you'll see the directions right there in the post. If you don't have Instagram, sorry, it's the only way to do it today. And make sure you go to chuckjonesmusic.com. That's going to be part of it as well. Okay. Obviously, Chuck Jones was a very famous animator as well. So if you search just Chuck Jones, you're going to find a lot of animation
like
as well.
1,000 pages or so.
Yeah. So make sure you search, like if you're just doing a Google search, Chuck Jones music or Chuck Jones guitar or something like that, and you're going to find it all over YouTube and that sort of thing as well. I know this. You could probably go in pretty in depth with this, but one more question before we start. What are the key elements to writing a well-crafted song? There's some songwriters out there who they're trying to understand the process. What would be just some probably missed overall 30,000-foot view type of things that you could tell an aspiring songwriter that would help them craft a song? There's tons of people that write songs, right? But like have a song that other people would want to listen to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, man, I've done a lot of songwriting and teaching and seminars through my career, and for organizations like NSAI, Nashville Songwriters Association International, and other organizations as well. And one thing and part of that is a lot of times we have to critique songs. Like the attendees part of your deal is you'll have a critique session where you got 10 writers in there, and they all play you one song, and you get to critique it for 10 minutes or something.
Right.
And so, and one thing that I noticed always that up-and-coming writers or starting writers miss, one thing that they don't pay attention to is clarity and focus.
Right.
Number one, if you got a good hook, that's a great place to start.
And what do you mean by hook?
Like a great title or even just a good musical hook. Like 90% of the songs I've written that are in the country market probably started out with a title.
Yeah.
I used to do it on legal pads.
Yeah.
I've got like a foot of legal pads that high off the floor in my closet at home with songs. I used to write them in the back of every one is 5 pages of titles.
Yeah.
Because 24 hours a day, you get an idea, you go, you write it down.
Yeah.
So I would write everything down from movies, TVs. So you want to have a good hook, but it could be a melodic hook.
Right.
It could be a melody or a lick, which you'll find a lot of pop music, that pulls you in on the intro before they even sing a word.
Exactly.
There's a great melodic hook.
Yeah.
But when you get into the lyrics, which Nashville is kind of known for the focus on lyrics and its songwriting community, a lot of times people would have a verse, and then there would be a chorus that maybe didn't really have that much to do with the verse.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they weren't really just
Cohesive. Yeah.
What I used to tell people was that every line in that song should, in some way or another, point to that title, point to that hook. It should support it in some way. There shouldn't be an odd man out.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be layers within the song, and if you get into a guy like, Leonard Cohen or someone who's a poet, then, all bets are off. But believe it or not, all his songs are really cohesive,
Yeah, yeah.
And, but that would be my main clarification of all. That's the biggest thing I always try to tell people.
Love it.
What is that line? Why is that line in your song?
Yeah.
And why did that character just come out of nowhere? Another thing is keep your person, if it's first person or third person,
Keep it the same.
which are the two most used persons in songwriting. It's either she did this to me or you did this to me.
Right.
Or I love you or I love her.
Right, yeah.
So, in fact, this song I'm getting ready to play in a minute, there's an interesting story that involves that, actually. But,
What is this next song?
it's called Love a Little Stronger.
Okay.
And what I started to say, though, sometimes people they'll be talking about, I love her in the chorus, in the verse, and they get to the chorus and it's like,
I love you.
you don't love me.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, wait, you're calling her up here and you down here, you got to, just,
Exactly.
that's part of clarity as well.
Yes.
You just got to really focus on those things.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, man. So this song is a song that was the #1 for Diamond Rio, a vocal group, who was really rocking. It's still out there working today.
Yeah.
And I notice I'm getting all these Instagram notifications on my iPad. People are seeing me on here and joining and following me on Instagram, man.
Excellent.
So thank you guys for that. But anyway, this song has we wrote it third person. It was her, and they never called us. In fact, I didn't know they were recording the song until it was after it was already recorded. It was never put on hold.
Oh.
One of my co-writers' publisher had taken it to the band and played it for them on their bus.
Okay.
I believe, and they just cut it. And she calls me up the next week and says, "Hey, guess what? Diamond Rio cut your song, Love a Little Stronger." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome! I didn't know it was on hold." She goes, "It wasn't. I just played it for them. They were in the studio the next day."
Beautiful.
And I said, "That's cool." She says, "Oh, and guess what?" She says, "It's the title of the album." I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!"
Gotta love that.
That's got to mean they plan on singling it eventually. And she goes, "Guess what else?"
It's the first
It's
single.
the first single. It's coming out in 2 weeks.
And so what that means, folks, is a single, there's a difference. With the way songwriters get paid is, one way you get paid is if the song is on the radio. And if the song's not a single, it's probably not going to play on the radio. So you get money for if it's on an album. There's a certain type of money that you get, a certain type of royalty. But if it plays on the radio, you get another kind. If it plays on TV, it's yet another kind. When it becomes a single, it's even a bigger deal than just being on a record.
Right. Well, every song on the record doesn't become a radio single. Obviously.
Right.
They used to pick out maybe 2 or 3 per record.
Yes.
These days they might go a little deeper because
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of deeper,
Yeah.
so when we wrote this song, it was love a little stronger, dig a little deeper, go a little farther, anything to please her, which is kind of a soft, perfect rhyme. Tonight I'm gonna start, show that girl what's in my heart. Ooh, 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 gonna love a little stronger.
Yeah.
We heard it was love a little stronger, dig a little deeper, go a little farther, anything to please you, girl.
Yeah.
Which would have been fine, except I might have done please ya.
Please. Yeah.
Please ya,
Yeah.
Tonight, but the reason I didn't like it so much at the time was tonight I'm gonna start all over, show you girl what's in my heart. You got you girl twice within 2 lines, which is one of those rules that's good to know before you break.
Yes.
When it comes to songwriting.
Yeah, you typically don't.
But I would
wanna
look for something that wouldn't have repeated that was so
So did they change it? They tweaked
They did it that way in the studio.
Okay.
They're in there singing it, and they probably just made a judgment call.
Sure,
Saying, you know what,
yeah.
guys, this is going to play a lot better for singing to the girl.
Right.
So let's just change that line to please you, girl.
Right.
And that's what they did. It goes a little like this,
Beautiful.
man.
Beautiful.
Let me try it again. I don't leave any room for doubt when it comes to you and me. You know all about the way I feel inside. You know how hard I try. That don't mean that I can't love a little stronger, dig a little deeper, go a little farther, anything to please you, girl. Tonight I'm gonna start all over, show you, girl, what's in my heart. Ooh, gonna love a little stronger. You tell me you're the lucky one, but I see things differently. And I have just begun to show you that you mean everything to me. I still feel the need to love a little stronger, dig a little deeper, go a little farther, anything to please you, girl. Tonight I'm gonna start all over, show you, girl, what's in my heart. Ooh, gonna love a little stronger. Something like that.
Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, that one has the melody hook and the lyrical hook. I mean, that's just solid.
Yeah. We actually didn't start with a hook on that song. I was writing with a couple of guys who wanted me to be in their trio. They were starting a trio, two singers, and who were friends of mine. And I never did do that, but we wrote a lot of songs together. Two of them got recorded, and this one became a #1 song. And the other one was a single as well on I forget his name now. Country artist from the '90s.
Right.
But but anyway.
Which that happens a lot in Nashville too. This is why people, last week we had Melissa on, and she said, her #1 advice was, if you want to do this, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a writer, you got to be where the writers and the musicians are. You can't do it from like some location. People have done it before, but typically, I don't know of anybody who's done it remotely and made it remotely. They have to come to the place. They have to be with the people and all that, and then that sometimes they'll move away. Right? There's a few people do McKenna and who's the guy in New York?
Who comes
with
to
the
town?
mustache and the white.
Hugh Prestwood.
Hugh Prestwood,
great.
Right? Yeah. So there's a couple guys like that still will do stuff like that. But where I was leading with it is, when you're writing songs and you're playing in bands and you're doing this, it's like it's nothing for these roles to change. One day this person's a producer now, and now they're now they've got a publishing company, or they've got a record label, or they're typically not studio musicians. They're typically studio musicians, but I'm sure you've played on this. You've done studio sessions.
Oh, I played on a lot of the records I got recordings on back in the '90s.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
A handful. I wasn't full-time studio musician,
right?
But
yeah, but you can't do that if you're not here. So
couldn't have done that from Memphis.
No. But it's nothing to say, well, maybe I'll try my hand at the artist thing, because you got the connections and you got the songs and you got the people and everything's there. So why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you do that? So I love that. That's amazing.
I was the guys tried to talk me and a buddy into doing a duo. I was offered a record deal or two when I got to town back when I started writing songs, but by that time I'd had like a hit on the radio.
Right.
I was like, you know what, man? I knew some people who were making a living as artists, and they were always complaining about life on the bus, never at home, and it was hard. I mean, that was to get successful at that was maybe twice as hard as to succeed as a songwriter, which is hard to begin with. I I was like, you know what? I think I'm digging this songwriting thing, man. I think I'll hang out in town here and do songs for a while.
Then you don't have to go away from the family and all the rest. I've got 10 million other questions to ask you there. I mean, you've just a wealth of knowledge, but I think to do right by the people here, I'm going to have to get to some questions here. So, friends, we're going to start asking some questions here. We're going to start on Facebook. So we have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube all watching, but in order to get your questions answered, you really need to be on Facebook or YouTube, because Instagram, I'm sorry, we cannot see. We've got several screens in front of us right now, and it's just not enough to be able to see all those. So you know what to do. Also, in the meanwhile, friends, we've got a post. It's on Instagram. Check it out. It looks like that. The information on how to win a lifetime membership to the Unstoppable Guitar System is right there in that post. So check that out. It's on Instagram. Part of that is going to chuckjonesmusic.com. Okay, Chuck is a great guitar player, amazing songwriter. If you missed it, if you're just joining us on over somewhere between where we stopped counting was 40 to 50 million records. Okay, what that means is when you have a song on a record and it has 5 million sales, that counts as 5 million. If you got 3 songs on there, that's 15 million. And we stopped counting somewhere around 40 or 50 right before the program.
Who has time for that?
Who has time for that, right? So we're going to get to your questions now, and we're going to be starting here on Facebook. If you would, friends, please, all caps with a question mark. Okay. Roddy is one of our
That's a great question.
main guys here, and so you have my dream job. How many chords on the average does someone in your profession must know to survive? Any chords in particular? You're going to be surprised by this answer, I think.
4, but you can make it on 3.
I love it. It's true. And all the fancy stuff that you're doing is it's icing on the cake, but bottom line, it's the cake. Right?
These days especially, man. I mean, in the 90s when I was really rocking, I'm still in the business, but I've slowed down considerably. Had a kid, pursuing some other things, like my YouTube channel these days, which is also Chuck Jones Music channel. But if you listen to much country radio or you watch the artist videos on YouTube, Roddy, you know that a lot of it's just 1/4, 6 minor, 5 or 1/5. You know.
Hold on, what's all this code he's talking about? I thought that's just
Nashville number system.
Nashville number system, right? You gotta know it. And
so if you're in the key of G, you know G is your 1 chord, and if you go up the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if you go up your major scale like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or octave. It's as simple as that. But so you're within that key, your G chord would be your 1 chord, A minor your 2 chord, B minor your 3 chord, C your 4 chord, D your 5 chord, E minor your 6 chord. Then actually it's E your 6 chord. Then it's I had to play that one in a while.
You don't play that one in country.
F sharp.
7.
It's actually F sharp minor 7 flat 5. I think it's a half diminished chord. Those are the chords that use nothing but the notes in the G scale to make a chord scale. So when we talk about 1 chord, 5 chord, 6 minor chord, those are the chords we're talking about. They're just relative to the key you're in. And one reason that Nashville loves the Nashville number system is because it's so useful in the studio. Because you get in the studio, guys, your singer might not want to do it in the key that you've charted the song out in. And I don't know if they still use it in L.A. or New York. I know they didn't when I was. They still.
My understanding is they don't. That's just a Nashville thing. I mean, they could, but it's not. And here in the Nashville studio, when you walk in, it's what all the guys have on there.
Yeah,
right
it's a
there. And you say, let's
system.
change the key. They're like, hey.
Doesn't matter what key it's in. They've got the numbers there. They just apply those numbers to whatever key you're in. 1, 4, 5 in G is G, C, D, and C it's C, F, G. And on and on.
It takes about an hour to understand and a lifetime for
a lifetime of benefit from it.
Oh my God, a lifetime benefit. Yeah, exactly.
So what?
Yeah.
So we were talking about how many chords you need to know. Yeah. Basically, not a lot, but if you think about it, guys, it's some of my favorite music is blues music. I grew up cutting my teeth on just 12-bar blues, which is just 3 chords.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and a lot of country music came out of that blues framework too, especially the older stuff. And as modern day country music though is pulls from all kinds of genres. I have a daughter who's 20 years old now, and her generation, they grew up listening.
Amazing singer, by the way.
Yeah, Savannah
Absolutely.
Jones. There's on my YouTube channel. There's actually an interview I did with her singing some just a few days ago. I posted. So, but anyway, they listen to everything from some of them listen to country, some don't, but they don't just listen to pop music or rock music. My daughter listens to everything from EDM to pop to R&B to Billie Eilish. I'm not sure what she is. I guess she's pop, but to old Etta James jazz, Aretha Franklin, Led Zeppelin, the newer the new Led Zeppelin, Royal Blood. She listens to a really wide genre of music, and country. And the people that are writing and singing country music these days grew up the same way.
Yeah.
So they're putting those influences. Some people tend to say, "Well, country music's over; it's ruined." They're using pop production techniques.
Yeah.
And that's true. They use click tracks in the studio almost everywhere now.
Yeah. Did they not used to?
It started right when I was starting my career in the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s. The first few sessions I did demo session is when we go in to record a demonstration of the song. That's where demo comes from.
Right. Without spending too much money.
Time. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Right.
I used to do I don't know. Back in the day, I was doing a session at the end of every month, recording about probably 6 or 7 songs. They were the best ones I'd written that month.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It probably cost $4 or $5 grand a session.
I remember that. Melissa was doing that once a month. And
I
that's changed since
do
we've
them
been
all
married.
in my basement now.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, the industry has changed so much. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're right.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, man, it's just 4 chords.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think this may pertain. I don't know. So many artists rage about record companies, sing about them in very angry verse. Have you faced that in your experience?
Oh man, yeah. When I first got to town, to Nashville, publishers or songwriters were invariably at odds with record labels, and one of the first things that happened, I think, not long after I got here was. NSAI, the organization for songwriters I was telling you about. It's a great thing to join if you're an up-and-coming songwriter for resources. They fought long and hard just to get the songwriters' names on the CD in the liner notes.
Wow,
they weren't putting songwriters on the liner notes back then.
Yeah.
I mean, they did when I was a kid. They put them on the 45s.
Right.
On the 78s, you'd see it. But in Nashville, they never did that. And so they fought long and hard with the record labels just to put that print on there to let people know who wrote the.
And it probably
dang
wasn't
song.
a legal thing. It was probably just like, come on, guys.
No, it was just
enough
one more.
pressure.
Just one more thing they didn't want to mess with.
Right. Yeah.
But-
and it makes their artists look like they don't write songs.
Exactly.
Which they
it's
don't.
like, oh, the artist didn't write that. Yeah. So
typically don't,
They
yeah.
typically don't.
Yeah.
There's exceptions to that as well.
Yeah.
But but that was kind of a big thing for songwriters. But I guess another thing would be, the main thing when songwriters have an angry verse with the record label is when they're not getting paid the right amount on the sales that their artist, the cut that they've got on a certain artist.
Right.
They know that artist, so if they know he sold 1 million records, and within a year or two they don't see whatever the statutory rate, mechanical rate is
Right.
at the time. It's about a dime now. It was 6 cents when I first got to town,
Yeah.
so it hadn't gone
I
up a
remember
lot.
that, yeah.
It was 2 cents when they first established it over 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, you'd have to audit. Occasionally songwriters have to audit a label.
Yeah.
And that costs money. Back in the day, it was 10 grand. I'm sure it's 20 or 30 just to
Oh,
audit
yeah.
them these days.
It's a weird little industry.
To see what's going on with your money.
It's crazy.
But
It's
on the other
weirdest
hand, it's all symbiotic. I wouldn't have a career without them.
thing. Yep. Yep.
And certain labels have been really good to me. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying a bad thing about them.
Right. Right. Jude's asking, how long typically does it take to write a song? Have you done some songs in like a day?
Sure.
That's the goal, right?
That's the goal. Especially if you're co-writing with one or two other writers. I've written with bands before where there were 5 or 6 of us in a room. But generally, somebody will have an idea when you get together. That somebody will have a title to throw out or just a concept. And that always gets the ball rolling. And if nobody has anything like that, we'll just sit and talk. And when I first started out back in the 90s, we would everybody recorded everything on a cassette recorder or work tapes, and we wrote everything down with pencil or pen and paper.
Right.
And these days, of course, everybody has their iPhone with a voice memo instead of for the recorder.
Yeah.
And you're either using a laptop or an iPad with a Pages or a text edit thing.
Yeah.
To do your, some people still do an analog, but
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, no, that's right. Yeah, how long it
How long
takes.
it takes to write a song.
So yeah,
So
like to crank it out in a day.
usually like to crank one out in a day. But if you get to
Otherwise,
a verse,
you got to reschedule with other writers, and
Right,
They
yeah.
may be in,
and
That's
that
the whole
happens
thing.
too, especially if you're writing with artists. And in fact, I write almost specifically with artists, almost exclusively with artists these days. Occasionally with other writers, but if you're writing with an artist, he may have somewhere to go. They're generally doing more than just songwriting. They got to go work out at the end of the day or something. So you might need another verse, and he's like, "I got to bail." And it's like, "That's all right, man. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah,
We'll get her done."
Yeah.
So and then again, if you're solo writing, I've taken 6 months, 9 months to finish a song.
Yeah.
Some of them I'm still tweaking on that are 20 years old.
And someone's asking here: are you required to submit lyrics and music, or just one or the other?
Well, if you're talking about to an official publisher, like if you have a publishing deal, then when you write that song, even if you just wrote the
I think they mean writing, like like when you write, are you required to create both the music and the lyrics?
Oh no!
or
Like
there
if
are
you're
people that
co-writing
just
with
do
someone.
lyrics or just do
Oh no,
music?
there are people, very successful songwriters who don't play a lick, or they don't sing a lick, and they don't make
They're just
they don't-
lyricists only,
They're
yeah.
strictly lyricists. Tony Martin's a great. Well, he can sing and play a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get him to. But
Yeah.
he's one of those guys. I've wrote a lot of songs with Tony, and he strictly does lyrics. But if they're good enough lyricists, then it's they don't need to do the music.
Yeah. John's asking, on Facebook, was there a first song that made you decide I got to do that, or was it more just
It was more
organically?
It was more just all of them.
Yeah.
It was all of it, man.
Yeah.
I grew up. I loved, as far as the songwriting part, I loved James Taylor and Jackson Brown. The Eagles,
Yeah.
all of that. The '70s country rock guys.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to pick out James Taylor songs, pick the guitar parts out, and learn them when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing got me thinking. Well, how hard would it be to write a song? So I started trying.
Yeah.
Found out it was pretty hard till you start doing it on a regular basis.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So let's see. Somebody asked here, David. You asked in regards to Instagram. You have to go to my Instagram and you have to look at the post with the one that we keep showing on there. It's going to be one of the that one right there. That's the one you have to go to, and then just look at the description there, David. That's where you're missing it. Okay, cool. What is the average cut if a song is accepted and recorded? I don't know what that
The
means.
average time till they record it, you mean?
Yeah, we don't know that. Okay.
It could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years, if that was the question. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So, friends, we're on we were on Facebook. Now we are headed over to YouTube. So if you're on Instagram, you know where to go. Head over to Instagram. I'm sorry. Head over to YouTube.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What are you saying?
I see somebody asked there, what the hell is a click track?
She's joking. Jerry.
Oh, she is?
She's
Okay.
Jerry's in my program. She means yeah.
Yeah, it is a metronome.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, a click track is actually when you record a metronome back in the day with analog recording. You
Had to have
put the
that,
microphone. Yeah. I did
Yeah.
that. You remember that?
Yeah,
You
sure,
see,
sure, yeah.
That's old school. And now you can do that electronically and that sort of thing. But that they actually had a track that you printed or that you recorded a metronome on.
Right, drummers would do that on the records back in the '90s, but these days, of course, the click track gets built into Pro Tools and Logic Pro, whatever you're using.
Yeah. Oh, that's so kind, Jerry. Thank you. You need to.
Oh, you're very sweet, man. I didn't get much sleep last night, so I don't have much voice today. But I'm using what I got as best I can.
I love it. I love it. So while I'm looking for a next one here, Chuck, I think I had one here that I wanted to, like specifically we talked about the song, but what is some veteran advice that you could give attitude-wise and that sort of thing for an aspiring songwriter who wants to move to Nashville or wherever it is, they just want to write good music, like outside of the song, which you've talked about, how keeping it cohesive and pointed and a hook and all that.
Yeah.
What other advice could you give that you might see songwriters kind of missing out on, whether it's like attitude or something other than specifically the song?
Man, if I had to say one thing that I've had to say one thing that is the most important thing about succeeding, not only in the music business, but any business for that matter. It is attitude. You know, attitude will get you in a lot of rooms, and attitude will keep you out of a lot of rooms.
Yes.
One thing I noticed, that there's this thing in songwriting industry. I'm sure some version of it exists in any industry, but it's called writing up or writing down. And I remember when I was first coming up, I only wanted to write with guys who'd had more success than me, obviously, because I wanted some of that to rub off on me. You know?
Yeah.
And then as I started to get a little success, people coming up under me would want to write with me, you know. And so, and it helps to be in. Of course, you don't have time to take on all of them, but occasionally you say, you know what, I see some talent in that kid. Obviously, somebody saw something in me at some point, so I see some talent in that person, and you'll do that. And you know, you never can tell. I mean, I remember one of the guys that I wrote with when he first got to town. I wrote about 25 songs with him, was Sam Hunt, and by the time he got his record deal, it'd been 5 years since we'd written a song, and he was on to a whole new group of songwriters.
Wow,
so I didn't,
how about that?
You know, I didn't get any cuts, but we made a lot of music together, and we did get a cut on another artist that we'd written together. But so anyway, other guys that I'd written with back in the day, Keith Urban. I knew Keith back in the early '90s when he first started coming over here on a 6-month visa.
Wow.
And he was making his living playing in bars down on the Panhandle in Florida.
That's tenacious right there,
Yeah.
right? So he'd play the bands, and then he would come up to write.
Yeah, he would come up to Nashville to write. He would go down there to play. His main reason was to come here to write and to get a record deal, which he did. His band called The Ranch had a deal on Capitol back. They had a record or two out that just never flew, and then he eventually, around 2000, went on his solo.
Yeah.
Decided to be a solo, which has worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah, he's not done so bad.
Not so
but
bad.
you know, I think a lot of people again would look at him and go, yeah, but that's Keith Urban. It's like, you got to remember that every Keith Urban, every Elvis Presley, every Chuck Jones, everybody who became somebody started at zero. And this is why I always tell you guys, when it comes to guitar, it's like you get frustrated. Well, I'm here. It would be akin to, if you're like, I'm frustrated with this. That's what I mean by I'm here. Is that I suck at this. I'm not good at this. And it's like, it would kind of be akin to me looking at my 3-year-old and being frustrated that he's 3 and that he can't speak or run or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like he is what the age that he is, and
Sure,
he's
yeah.
probably going to trump me in everything that he does in his life. Once he gets
Right,
in, he's probably going to annihilate it. So you got to remember we're all on a spectrum, and if you practice a little bit, then you'll get a little bit better. If you practice a lot, you'll get a lot better, and then also how many years you're doing that, and how deep you're going.
Sure.
How tenacious you are. So
Absolutely.
attitude is everything. If you're constantly worried about when am I going to get to the next thing, then you're never going to be in that place where you're having fun. You've got to just have fun, at least where you're at.
I remember there was a guy who'd been a very successful writer who came to town once years ago, and he was from out of town. He came to town, and he'd had some cuts on the, I forget which big, I don't know, he'd written a bunch of songs for somebody like Rocky Mountain High. What's the guy's name?
Oh, John Denver.
John Denver, somebody like that. And he opens his, and a buddy of mine went into who became one of the biggest writers in town, goes into the room to write with him, never met the guy. And my buddy is getting his guitar out of the case as this guy's speaking, and the guy is talking to him, and the guy says, you know what, man, I've had plenty of hits. I'm not really into that today. I want to write something just for fun. And my buddy, he has his guitar in his hand, and he goes, and back in the case it goes. He said,
He was with John Denver, and John Denver said this?
No. It was a guy that had a bunch of hits on it. I think it was John. It might have been a different artist. I forget.
Right.
Somebody like John Denver, somebody of that stature.
Yes.
And this guy had some success, but I never heard of him being around Nashville much after that. I mean, he was a guy that actually worked his way into some stuff, but. Then, and I think it was more the attitude the guy had about saying it.
Sure, yeah.
Being an a-hole.
I want to waste your time today.
I want to waste your time
I know
today,
you need to feed your kids, but
I just want to write for fun. Yeah, and of course there are days you want to write just for fun without thinking about commerciality. But
and if you could do both, that's even better. If you can,
absolutely,
if you can be writing from your heart. And that's the ones that make it. And that's the
Sure,
goal, is that if you're, with everything, with the stuff that I do here on YouTube, with your content that you create, with songs that you create, with whatever it is that you do, if you can stay as authentic as possible, and it's hard because if you see this guy having success and you go, well, I wonder if I did that, if it would help with my career or whatever, then you follow that a little bit. And we all fall prey to that sometimes. And it's the same thing as looking at another guitar player saying, I should be there, when in fact, what you do the best. There's nobody that does what you do the best.
Right.
No one writes Chuck Jones songs better than Chuck Jones.
Yeah.
No one writes Melissa Pierce songs better than Melissa Pierce.
Who writes great songs, by the way.
Yes, and they've written
We've written some
lots
good ones
together.
together.
I love this stuff.
I have one thing to say about that before we move on is that there are two aspects to what you're talking about there, I think, Eric. One is what we used to call chasing radio.
Yes.
Which means you're trying to write something to get it on the radio.
Yeah.
And generally what's on the radio right now was written 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes.
So chasing radio is one way to look at that, like, well, don't be chasing the radio, right? Just write something that's really solid. But another way of looking at it is that the flip side of that coin is that there is a target. If you're in Nashville and you're writing for trying to write commercially viable songs that can be played on radio, that somebody's going to want to record,
yes,
you have to aim at that target. You can't sit there writing your introspective folk songs all day long about, your cat and expect, whoever the hot new act of the day to want to gravitate towards that. There is a target, but you have to bring something to it other than just writing something to be commercial.
Yes,
it's best to try to put your imprint on it in some fashion.
Which is why you got to hang around with the people that are doing it. Because it's like you're going to learn one thing and learn another and another and another, and now all of a sudden you're part of that community, and now you're doing all that stuff. Yeah. It's like even with all your experience in the clubs and what have you, you still had to move to Nashville and understand, well, how does Nashville do it?
Right. That's right. I had to study it, man.
Yeah. Somebody
asked me, are you 60? So no, I'm 63, but hopefully I'll still be here when I'm 64. Barbecue chicken, by the way, whoever asked that a minute ago. Barbecue anything.
Let's see, you've been writing so long. Do you have a favorite song of So What It Is? Maybe that's of your own. Do you have a favorite of yours?
Favorite song of mine that I've written?
Yeah. Like the one that you're
one of them is a song I wrote with my buddy Chuck Cannon called, and you can find it, Chuck's recorded on an album of his, it's called Messes.
Messes. Okay. And that one really spoke to you.
Yeah, I got the idea. I actually wrote the first verse before I brought it to Chuck. And though now it's got like 6 verses and 2 bridges, 3 bridges. But it's about a 5-minute song. But I got the idea watching in 2008 it's an older song, when I was watching a DVD or on TV or something of the Eric Clapton Guitar Fest in Chicago that year. And just thinking about how Clapton, that he put that on every year. Right. Or when he put it on as a way to fund his rehab place down in Antigua, I think it is. Yeah. Because he had to recover years ago before he almost killed himself with heroin and everything else, and drink and alcohol. So he got straight down there, and after he did, he opened this facility down there, and he put that festival on to keep it going. That's what he was doing. So I was just thinking, I've been cleaning up your messes now for years. Pulled you from the puddles of your tears, where I found you lying face down in your fears. I've been cleaning up your messes now for years. Anyway, it's a long song. It's got a long arc, and there's like a gotcha kind of a payoff halfway through. So it's one of my faves. Yeah. My good buddy Chuck Cannon. We've written a lot of songs that are some of my more favorites. Yeah. There's a song that I wrote with your lovely wife Melissa Pierce a few years back called Unwritten. And I think it's actually on my website, chuckjonesmusic.com. Okay. You can find all my social media there as well as my YouTube sites on my website too, guys.
I remember that too. I remember that.
Yeah, and I always loved that song, man. It was one of the first songs we wrote together.
Beautiful content. Some songs should remain unwritten, right?
Yeah. Some songs should remain unwritten.
I love that. Well, Chuck, do you have something else that you want to play for us?
Yeah, man. Sure.
And how many tunes do you got? Because
more than we got time for, more than likely.
Okay. Well, we would probably have time for we could end with one, or we could do, I'll tell you
you
what.
think.
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do some? We'll take like one or two more questions yet. We'll do some rapid fire questions, and then we'll end with a tune.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll have you introduce the tune too, so they know exactly what it is they're going to be hearing and all that good
Sure
stuff.
thing. Man.
All right, let's check to see if there's ever Jackson's asking have you been to Europe, and I believe you have.
Yes, I've been to Europe a few times, man. I did a tour over. Well, not a tour. It was like a record release tour with Deana Carter over there. Well, actually, we went to England and Scotland, so I didn't do that we just went to England and Scotland to do that. But I've been to a writer's retreat at a castle in the south of France that Miles Copeland used to hold back in the 90s. The guy that co-owned Sting's record label with him, Pangea. And after they sold that, he bought this castle. It was like a 800-year-old castle in the Languedoc region, south of France.
Yeah.
So I got to go down there and do that for a week, which
That's
was
cool.
fun. I've done that in Australia as well.
Yeah.
And I've been to Amsterdam once with Chuck Cannon and Laurie White. My wife and I went with them when we first met them. We went there that year. We wrote a song over there called Amsterdam on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's one place. I haven't been to Amsterdam. I say one place. There's a lot of places I haven't been.
It's a
That's
cool
one
place to
I
go.
really do want to go.
I don't advise going there the week of New Year's Eve like we did. It's pretty damn cold.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can't imagine. Okay, Chuck, are you ready for some rap?
Absolutely.
Oh, Cheap Zen, thank you,
All right.
buddy. He's great. We're gonna be having lunch today, and
We can do lunch now, man.
Thank you, Cheap
Heck
Zen.
yeah.
So kind of you. Anybody wants to do that? We'll get to your question right away. Otherwise, we're kind of ending near coming to the end of the show here. I have some rapid fire questions for Chuck. He's going to be playing another song for us as well. But a couple things I want you to do, and remember, friends, is there's a post that is both on Instagram and I believe on Facebook. Just look for the information on how to win a lifetime membership to UGS/365 right there on the post. So that's my Instagram. Go there and you'll find the directions specifically. Follow that. I'm telling you, there's a ton of people that aren't going to follow it correctly. It's so easy to win basically a package of over $500 today. It's absolutely so easy.
Dang.
I think one person got it right last week. We had a bunch of people trying, but nonetheless, they got it wrong. So yes,
Dang.
and don't forget to go to chuckjonesmusic.com. I think we had that in there as well.
I just assume they go to my YouTube channel, Chuck Jones Music Channel.
Okay.
And you can. The link is on my website though. And
Beautiful.
sign up there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you will, and
Indeed.
click the notification bell. I just started releasing regular videos on there every week. So
Yes, and we didn't even get to touch on what Chuck can do on guitar. He's an amazing guitar player and just very well rounded.
Cool.
Very well rounded. So make sure you check out his stuff. He's going to be posting some really cool chicken picking and all, right? Like
yeah,
you do
everything
it
from
all.
guitar playing to songwriting stuff to home recording stuff as well.
Yeah.
You know.
And I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
I may like to see if you would want to maybe do something for the course
Always,
regarding that.
always,
I
man.
think
Love
that'd be
to.
really cool. We've
Love
had a
to.
lot of requests for that. So,
Yeah.
okay, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
I am, man. Yeah.
All right, friends. I kind of think a little bit about these rapid fire questions according to who we have in the studio and what have you. So you're not going to hear the same ones all the time. But Gibson or Fender?
Well, I assume you're talking electric guitar since
Yes, not
Fender.
amps.
Fender's not an acoustic contender.
Right.
I'm a Fender guy,
Yeah.
although I love Gibsons as well. I think it's just because I grew up, my favorite players at the time were playing Strats probably.
Right. Yeah.
But I love Gibson guitars too.
Yeah.
They're all good.
Yeah. And if you guys remember the burnt Telecaster, a picture of a burnt Telecaster.
Oh,
Oh, do you have that
just
here?
to show it,
Oh,
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah,
It's
there
not
you
plugged
go.
in, but here you go.
So what, could you give us a quick story on this?
Man, this is a 68. It was a blonde. There's still remnants of the blonde paint on the edges if you look real close.
Yeah.
And up here, right here, you can see a little blonde.
Yeah.
And I bought it from a buddy, George Bradfield, who he walked into a guitar show here in Nashville about 25 years ago. And he didn't even have it in a case. He was just holding it in his hand, walking through and I said, "Hey, George," he was from Memphis too. He'd moved up here before I did. I said, "Hey, George, what you got there, man?" He goes, "Man, that's a 68 Tele." And I had just had a hit on the radio, so I had some money in my pocket. I said, "Really?" I said, "Man, it looks awesome." I said, "What happened to it?" And he said, "Well, Strings and Things was a famous guitar store, music store in Memphis, and they started when I was, two guys started when I was a teenager, and their original location burned down, and not every room, but they had to move to a different location. So anyway, this guitar had been sitting in one of their showrooms, and the room had just got incredibly hot, but it didn't get direct flame. So this thing was baked. And I first met Jake Owen when he first moved to town, and he tried to recreate it with a brand new Paisley Fender. And I went over to his apartment one day, and he had set it. Well, he told me about it. I didn't see him do it. He had set it on his in front of his fire and gone to bed that night.
Yeah.
And it was one of those Paisley tellies that had like a 1/4 inch of lacquer on it.
Right, right.
And he woke up the next morning and it had melted all over his hearth.
Not good.
Didn't quite get the same effect.
No.
You kind of need a kiln to get this effect, I think.
Yeah. You need
sounds great, though.
You need to have a music store and light it on fire. And
Right.
Have other guitars heated up, and then you're going to get that design you're looking for there.
Absolutely.
All right, Beatles or Stones?
Oh, that's a tough one. I love them both. But just for the songwriting, probably the Beatles.
Yeah.
Just for the eclecticness there.
If you could only pick one style to play, since you play all of them really well, blues, well, heck, blues, I'm throwing in rock, R&B, country.
Blues, hands down, man.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. See, we didn't even get to hear your blues playing today. Hendrix or Clapton?
You know what? I'll have to say Hendrix.
Yeah.
Clapton, I was a huge fan, have been my whole life, and I probably learned and played in bands infinitely more Clapton songs than Hendrix songs.
Yeah.
Mainly because Clapton is he's easier to emulate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Hendrix is
Indeed.
just such an original, his own deal.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah,
I think
Hendrix
his
is
playing
pretty
is
much
murmuring amazing things.
right. Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. I mean, when Clapton, when Hendrix first went to London, I mean, Clapton was nonplussed. You know,
Yeah.
he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So Hendrix, he's kind of in a class of his own, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, since you have a great ear, since you know music theory, you've been to school, if you could only have one, let's see how I phrase this. If you could only have one, would you prefer a better ear or more theory knowledge, like where you're at today?
Oh, if you could only have one.
Yeah.
Oh, well, an ear always, man.
Yeah,
You know, I
me
mean,
too.
the Beatles didn't. They claimed, and with the songs they wrote, you wonder sometimes that they didn't study a little on the side and not tell anybody.
Right.
None of them read a lick of music.
Right,
and
yeah.
didn't but they did love jazz players. They loved B.B. King, the blues players.
They learned the
They claimed they didn't know anything about music theory.
Yeah.
Yet they wrote this incredible catalog of songs.
Of stuff that's
so
all
you know,
over
you
the
can know all the
place.
theory in the world and still not be able to do that.
Yep.
So the ear is
Indeed.
going to get you a lot further than the mirror. And theory. And long story short, if you got the good ear, at the end of the day, the theory will come.
The theory is there. Yep. I have a video, actually. It was something. It was basically the concept was learning by ear, and this came to me as I was falling asleep this one night. Was that playing by ear is? I think the title of it was like is 80% music theory, and really I said that not to offend people because if you think about it, like learning by ear is almost all music theory after a certain time. If you just sit there with a guitar and you find notes and melodies, but then eventually you memorize shapes and everything else. That's the
You
music theory.
internalize
So
it without knowing what you're doing.
yeah, it's like I say, at an infant, you heard the same thing the same way as you would be as a mature musician, but now you know what to do with the information. You're hearing the
Sure,
same stuff, but now you know what to
Absolutely.
do with the info.
Absolutely.
Martin or Gibson, acoustic?
Oh, Gibsons. I have some Gibsons. I've never owned a Martin, but I would kill for one of those sinkers they're putting out
Yeah.
with that old wood they found
That's right, yeah.
underwater. You know?
Yeah.
I love Martins too, but I've just gravitated towards Gibsons through the
Right.
years. Yeah.
Now, this is a Nashville thing, but you guys know Groon's guitar or Carter's guitar?
You know, I actually have a 33 or 34. They weren't sure which National resonator guitar.
Yeah.
It's the brass body that's nickel plated with the Hawaiian palm trees and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful guitar, man.
Yeah.
My wife bought it for me for my 40th birthday.
Oh, beautiful.
And so I actually have sold stuff down there before. I've only been in Carter's a couple of times. It's a newer
Yeah.
place.
Yes.
And it's awesome. I
Yeah,
love that
it's
store.
amazing, yeah.
But the one, I was in there recently with my daughter and just kicking around. And I have to say, I believe that Gruen's is probably a little better curated.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Organized.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only problem
Yeah.
I had with Carter's.
Yeah.
Although I kind of love the disarray of it all too.
Yeah, and it feels they've got a lot of guitars. I feel like they might have more guitars there than, if I were to just guess, at least more electrics than Gruen seems more acoustic heavy now, and I think.
Is that right? I haven't been in Gruen's in years, so I wouldn't know. Man.
More electric now, yeah.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Okay, since you do all of these, what do you like best, studio, live, or writing?
Oh man, that's a tough one too. There's no rapid fire to this. So,
yeah, I know.
So
take it easy fire.
You know, I just I didn't really know my way around the studio until the last, I guess, 20 years since DAWs, digital audio workstations, had become a thing.
Right.
And but I got my first Pro Tools rig. A buddy, Chuck Cannon, gave me his old one about 20 years ago, and I started diving in. And a couple of years ago, I started using Logic Pro, and I will get in. It's almost like for artists, and I've done this before too, get into drawing for a while.
Yeah.
And it's like you lose a sense of time. And studio's the same way for me. I just get so into it, and I love everything about it. And songwriting's similar.
Yeah.
In that you're running these lines through your head. Sometimes I'll have the whole song in my head before I'll write anything down.
Yeah.
And almost invariably I'll have the first verse and chorus before I write anything down.
Yes.
But and it's just like it's a great mental game. But man, I have to say, all that's fun all day long. But my most spiritual experience in music has been standing on stage with a good electric guitar and a great amp behind you and a great band. Like even if it's just a good, I did these gigs a few years ago with Michael Rhodes on bass and Pete Abbott on drums. Occasionally we'd have a guitar, keyboard player, but and my daughter would sit in occasionally. She's a real bluesy R&B singer, and man, there's nothing like it. If you're just up there playing blues and you're just soloing, and it just takes you to another zone. Another zone.
I love
another level, man.
I love it.
I have to say live.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Since we're going to be going to lunch here in a minute, Indian or Asian food?
Well, I don't.
Neither.
I haven't had any Indian in Nashville in years, but I think it's probably all kind of the same around here. But I'll have to say some of the best food I've ever had was Indian food in London and Indian food in Sydney.
Oh yeah,
Sydney, Australia.
It's hot.
I'm sure they've got it. They probably have it here too. I don't know.
All right, songwriter question: He Stopped Loving Her Today or The Gambler?
He Stopped Loving Her Today, man.
Yeah.
And
I asked that one to Melissa last week. She said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew she did that.
And
I have to agree. I have to agree. I used to play The Gambler when I was a kid, and I loved that song too.
Oh, classic.
And he got 5 movies out of it. But still, there's just something about the story to He Stopped Loving Her Today. And the payoff at the end.
Oh, my God. If you guys don't know those tunes, listen to them, especially He Stopped Loving Her Today.
That's right.
I mean, that tune's got the stink all over it, doesn't it? That's
it
amazing.
Does indeed.
Okay, Chuck, will you play us one more?
Absolutely, man.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you're going to be playing for us?
Well, do you mind if I end with the Joe Robinson thing instead of the...
Oh, love it.
I was going to end with a John Barry hit I had years ago called Your Love Amazes Me, but...
That only went to #1. He's not going to play that. But that's good.
I'm not going to play that one, yeah. You can hear that.
You can hear that, right, yeah. I love it. You've got so much material and so much stuff. I mean, we could do 10 of these and not even
you have to have me back sometime.
We definitely will.
So there's this kid from Australia who lives here in Nashville now named Joe Robinson.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know about Joe, check him out. Go to his Instagram. He posts him playing there on a regular basis. And he tours all over the world. He was a what do you call it? Tommy Emmanuel was his mentor. And he started out playing acoustically, that kind of really off the chart alternate thumb picking with jazz chords and all kinds of lightning fast riffs and stuff. And so anyway, Joe reached out to me on MySpace like 15 years ago. He was 16 years old. I think he's about 30 now. But anyway, we've written a few songs through the years, and this was back in 2012. He made a record with Frank Rogers here in Nashville, well-known record producer. And he came over to the house, and this might be the first song we wrote. I'm trying to think. But anyway. And this was, I was telling you about earlier about some Joe Pass stuff that I found when I was a kid, and I came back with it. So chord melody stuff, a book I found, and I ingested all this stuff, and I started incorporating into some songs, or into my playing. And so Joe came over one day, and I said, man, I got nothing, but I came up with this lick that kind of learned these passing chords from a Joe Pass book. And I said, it's like, no, it's just what it was. I'm a little sloppy today.
Yeah.
But that's all I had. And so he said, man, I love that. Let's write a song to that. So, and I came up with a hook called One Heart at a Time, and we were off and running. And
That's the name of this one, One Heart?
One Heart at a Time.
Okay.
And it's on Joe's Let Me Introduce You record, I think.
Right.
From 2012. It's on iTunes. So Joe's got it on there. I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm hoping to. Anyway,
Beautiful.
I'll try to get through it. It's a lot of work.
All right, all right. Well, you just, if you don't want to play a piece, that's fine.
There we
You
go,
wanna play
man.
the
Yeah, I
whole
might
thing?
do that.
Yeah, just do your thing.
Let's see. So yeah. Everybody's always running around, such a hurry, filling up the world with trouble and worry. Everywhere I turn, it seems I see somebody hurting. There's gotta be a better way to live than this. I don't know why we gotta mistreat one another. Why can't we be a little kinder to each other? Is it so hard to be a brother to a brother, a sister to a sister, a lover to a lover? I'm gonna do what I can. Please put your hand in mine, and we'll change the world one heart at a time. There we go.
Yeah.
Ain't no way we're ever gonna do it all at once, baby. Little at a time. I know it might sound crazy, but I believe that it's a world worth saving, a chance worth taking, love's worth making, anything to keep another heart from breaking. I'm gonna do what I can. Please put your hand in mine, and we'll change the world one heart at a time. Baby, don't you think the world would be a better place with a lot more loving in the human race? Something like that.
Brother, thank you so much for
I need to
being-
warm up before I do that one.
Chuck,
Appreciate you guys.
Thank
man.
you so much for answering these questions. Thank you so much for bringing your talent and your heart and everything here. We're definitely going to have you back. Friends, give Chuck a beautiful goodbye here. And
Thank
do
you,
not
guys.
forget to go to chuckjonesmusic.com. Check out the post that we have on Instagram. We're going to go eat some lunch now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you.
I enjoyed it. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.